The first week of May was supposed to feel like spring. Instead, it felt like a warning. Farmers across the county woke up to a forecast they hadn't seen in years, a late frost, the killing kind, moving in fast, with no time to prepare and no mercy for anyone who hadn't seen it coming. Fields that had been carefully planted were now sitting exposed under open sky. Tender seedlings, weeks of work, thousands of dollars, all of it at the mercy of one cold night. Neighbors called each other. Feed stores ran out of frost cloth before noon. A few people drove out to check on their crops and came back quiet. And then someone mentioned the old Callaway place, a field Dale Mercer had been leasing for the past 2 seasons. Past the bend in the road, past the farms that were scrambling, there was a field that looked different from every other one in the area. It was ringed, completely ringed, by what looked like a wall of old, dark, matted hay. 40 bales of it, stacked in a rough border around the entire field, sagging and discolored, the kind of material most people would have hauled to the burn pile months ago. When the frost finally arrived, people on that road noticed something strange about Dale Mercer's field. At first light, while other farmers were already counting losses, his field looked different enough that people started asking questions. How does a wall of rotting hay end up becoming the most talked about thing on a road full of farmers? And why did it take a disaster for anyone to take it seriously? If you've ever done something the right way and been laughed at before it worked, this one's for you. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this, and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? We want to see this community on the map. Dale Mercer had been farming the same 32 acres for 11 years. Not a big operation. Not the kind that showed up in agricultural journals or won county awards. Just a man, a piece of ground, and the particular stubbornness that keeps small farmers going when the numbers say they shouldn't bother. He wasn't the most popular voice at the local co-op meetings. He asked too many questions. He read things other farmers didn't read. Old farming manuals, papers on soil temperature, articles about practices that had stopped being fashionable sometime in the 1950s. People were polite about it, but not convinced. His neighbor, Roy, who ran a clean, well-organized operation and had invested heavily in modern frost protection equipment over the years, once summed up the local feeling plainly. "Dale thinks too much," Roy told someone at the grain store. "Sometimes you just have to farm." Dale heard about it. He didn't argue. He just kept reading. It started in late March. Anyone driving past the Callaway field would have seen Dale making trips back and forth with his old flatbed truck, stacking bales around the outside edge of the field, not inside it, around it, like he was building a fence, except the fence was made of old, dark, decomposing hay that no self-respecting farmer would have kept. He'd sourced them for nearly nothing. A dairy operation 2 towns over had a pile they needed gone. The bales were too far gone to feed anything. Dark with moisture, soft in places, the kind of material that breaks apart when you lift it. Roy pulled over one morning to watch. "What exactly are you building?" he asked. "Windbreak," Dale said. "Thermal buffer." Roy looked at the bales. He looked at Dale. He drove away without saying anything else, which, in the way of small farming communities, said everything. By the time Dale finished, the field was ringed with 40 bales, roughly chest high, staggered to reduce gaps. It looked, by most accounts, like a mess. People started slowing down to look as they drove past. Someone took a photo. It made the rounds. For more than a month, those bales sat there. People drove past them every day. Some shook their heads, some laughed outright. A few joked that Dale was building a fort instead of a farm. The longer the bales stayed, the more certain everyone became that whatever he was doing couldn't possibly work. Could a wall of rotting hay actually do anything worth doing? Or had Dale Mercer finally gone one idea too far? Here is what most people driving past didn't know. Dale wasn't expecting the bales to perform miracles. The Callaway field sat slightly higher than many of the surrounding fields, and over the years he'd noticed something. On cold nights, wind moved differently across that piece of ground. The field already had a small advantage. What interested him was whether the old bales could help him hold on to that advantage. Hay, even old, decomposing hay, is a remarkably poor conductor of heat. The air pockets trapped inside the material, the same structure that makes it useful as animal bedding and mulch, also make it a surprisingly good natural insulator. But Dale wasn't just thinking about insulation. A frost doesn't only arrive from above. On still, clear nights, cold air behaves in ways that can surprise people. It settles, drifts, and collects where conditions allow it to. A physical barrier around the edge of a field doesn't stop the cold from existing, but under the right conditions, it can change how air moves near the ground and reduce the speed at which colder air pushes across vulnerable areas. Sometimes that small difference is all a crop needs. Old-timers in parts of England and the American Midwest used to experiment with versions of this. Straw bale windbreaks, brush borders, dense hedgerows planted tight to field edges, not because they looked good, but because farmers were always searching for any advantage they could get. Dale had found the idea in a 1947 agricultural extension pamphlet he'd bought for $2 at an estate sale. The frost warning came on a Tuesday evening. By Wednesday morning, the temperature had dropped faster than forecast. The Weather Service revised its predictions twice before midnight. What had been called a light frost was reclassified. Some areas were looking at temperatures that could damage even established crops. Roy was up at 3 a.m., driving his fields, watching helplessly as the thermometer kept dropping. Other farmers did what they could: smudge pots, frost cloth, irrigation systems running at full pressure. All of it expensive, all of it frantic. Dale slept. Not from carelessness. He'd done his preparation in March, slowly, for nearly nothing, when people were laughing at him. There was nothing left to do but wait. When he walked the field at first light, the bales were glazed with frost on their outer faces. The difference wasn't dramatic from a distance. Some outer rows showed light frost burn. A few plants had taken damage, but the field had survived. Across the road, several neighboring fields had suffered losses far worse than anything Dale was seeing. Roy came by 3 days later. He walked the field edge. He looked at the bales, still standing, frost burned on the outside, soft and dark and ugly as ever. He looked at the crop. He didn't say much for a while. "Where'd you get the idea?" he finally asked. Dale told him about the pamphlet. Roy nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're recalculating something they thought they already understood. Within a week, 2 other farmers from the area had called Dale to ask questions, not to laugh, to learn. One of them had already sourced old bales from a local feed operation and was planning a small trial on his most frost-exposed field before the next season. The grain store conversation shifted, not dramatically. Farming communities don't turn on a dime, but noticeably. The question changed from, "What is Dale doing over there?" to, "Has anyone tried that bale thing?" The 40 bales didn't cost Dale much. The time to stack them, sourced cheaply from someone who needed them gone, was the biggest investment. The knowledge cost $2 at an estate sale and an hour of reading. The mockery was free, as it usually is. What protected that field wasn't magic or luck or even particularly advanced science. It was a man who looked at an old answer to a permanent problem and decided to take it seriously before anyone else thought it was worth taking seriously. There are practices and ideas sitting in old manuals and forgotten research that still have something to teach. The land hasn't changed nearly as much as people sometimes think. Frost still comes. Farmers still adapt. What changes is whether anyone bothers to look. Dale Mercer bothered. And on the coldest night of that spring, the 40 rotting bales that everyone had laughed at helped hold a line that most people on that road never expected to hold. Sometimes the thing that looks like junk is the thing that does the job, and sometimes the person who looks like they're overthinking is the only one who actually thought it through. If this story made you think differently about something you'd written off, share it with someone who farms, or someone who just needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about the people who got it right before anyone believed them. And one last thing, drop your location in the comments. We want to know where this community reaches.